The gym was quiet that morning, just the low hum of air vents and the rhythmic thud of gloves against a heavy back. Aria Morgan moved with precision, her breathing steady, sweat carving thin paths down her face. At just 28, she'd already lived lifetimes most couldn't imagine. 6 years of special operations, 3 deployments, and more nights haunted by shadows than she could ever admit out loud. But to anyone watching, she was just another young woman trying to rebuild herself, piece by piece, in this quiet corner of the world. No one in that room knew that the past she was trying to escape was about to find her again. And when it did, everything would change. Before we go further, if you believe real heroes never truly stop serving, make sure to like this video and subscribe. Because what happens next will remind you why some people can never outrun their calling, no matter how hard they try. Her earbuds pulsed low with music, but she wasn't really listening. Training wasn't a hobby for Aria, it was survival. After her shoulder injury forced a medical rotation stateside last year, she'd been grounded, reassigned, told to focus on recovery, the kind of polite exile they gave soldiers they weren't sure what to do with anymore. For months, she woke up before sunrise, ran until her lungs burned, and spent hours in this gym, trying to sweat out the weight of failure. But no matter how hard she pushed, she could still hear the sounds from that last mission. The gunfire, the shouting, the explosion that tore her team apart. There were names she couldn't say anymore without her throat locking up, faces she saw behind her eyelids every time she tried to sleep. That morning, though, something felt different. The light through the gym windows carried a strange stillness, and Aria's instincts, sharpened from years of combat, told her something was coming. The kind of quiet before a storm. She was wrapping her hands again, preparing for another round, when the vibration hit, faint at first, then urgent. Her phone, tossed on the bench a few feet away, lit up with a flashing banner in bold red letters. HQ, Priority Alert. Aria froze, her breath hitching. She hadn't seen that code since she'd been active duty. The Army didn't send alerts like that to reservists unless it was something extraordinary. Her hands were slick as she grabbed the phone, tapping it open. One line glared back at her, simple and cold. Lieutenant Morgan. Immediate callback. Tactical deployment required. Her stomach nodded. Deployment? No, that didn't make sense. She wasn't even supposed to be on the list anymore. She stepped toward the corner of the gym, heart pounding, and dialed the number flashing on the screen. The line clicked, but there was no greeting, no formalities, just a voice she hadn't heard in over a year. Morgan, it's Breaks. We need you. Now. Her grip tightened around the phone. Sir, I thought I was inactive. What's going on? There was a pause on the other end. The kind of silence that carries weight. Then Briggs spoke, his voice clipped, urgent, and low. Details are classified. You'll be briefed when you arrive. Your team's assembling in 90 minutes. This isn't a drill, Lieutenant. Click. The line went dead. Aria stared at the screen, her reflection fractured in the black glass. The gym noises faded, her surroundings dimming as her mind spiraled. Tactical deployment. Her team. 90 minutes. The words slammed into her like body blows, dredging up memories she'd buried deep beneath layers of denial and discipline. She pressed her palms against her knees, steadying her breath, but it came in short, ragged bursts. Around her, the world kept moving, trainers shouting, weights clanking, music thumping, but she was standing in a different reality now. She grabbed her bag and headed for the door, her legs moving before her mind caught up. Outside, the air felt heavier, thicker, like the weight of what waited ahead was already pressing down on her chest. She slid into the driver's seat of her car and slammed the door shut, the silence almost deafening. Her phone buzzed again. This time, a short text from an unknown number. Bring your gear. All of it. Her fingers hovered over the screen, the words blurring as 1,000 memories clawed their way forward. The sandstorm during her second deployment. The first time she had to lead a fire team into hostile territory. The night they lost Reyes. That night still lived inside her. The sharp pop of rifle fire. The scream over calms. The chaos when the extraction bird was late. She'd blamed herself for months, even though every after-action report cleared her of fault. It didn't matter. In her heart, it was still her responsibility. For months, she thought she was done. Done leading, done fighting, done carrying the weight of other people's lives on her shoulders. But now, HQ had called, and Aria knew there was no choice. When the country called, you answered. That was the promise she'd made, the oath burned into her bones. And no matter how fractured she felt, no matter how unprepared she believed she was, there was something deeper pulling her forward. Muscle memory, duty, loyalty. A force stronger than fear. Her reflection in the rearview mirror startled her. The woman staring back didn't look like someone who'd been retired. There was still steel in her jaw, focus in her eyes, that stubborn fire that had carried her through firefights and ambushes halfway across the world. She adjusted her grip on the wheel, slammed the car into gear, and peeled out of the parking lot, her tires screeching against the asphalt. But as she merged onto the highway, Aria felt the creeping edge of something else, dread. Whatever this was, it wasn't standard. They didn't pull injured lieutenants out of medical rotations unless the stakes were high, catastrophically high. The classified nature, the urgency, the assembling of her old team. This was bigger than anything she'd faced before. Her gut told her that much. And Aria Morgan trusted her gut more than anyone alive. The drive blurred into a silent storm of thoughts. Her hands gripped the wheel until her knuckles blanched, replaying Briggs' voice over and over. 90 minutes. That was all the time she had to transition from broken soldier to battlefield commander again. She knew she couldn't afford hesitation, but doubts still whispered at the edges of her mind. Was she ready? Could she lead again without breaking this time? Could she protect them? All of them? If things went wrong again? And then, beneath the roar of her racing heart, another sound, distant but rising, unshakable. That old cadence, drilled into her bones. You don't quit. You adapt. You overcome. Words she'd repeated in desert heat, freezing rain, and pitch-black nights where every step might be her last. That mantra steadied her now, even as uncertainty clawed at her resolve. Up ahead, the city skyline glimmered beneath the harsh sun, but somewhere out there, shadows were moving. Aria didn't know yet where they were going, who they were after, or why she'd been pulled back into the fight. But she knew one thing. When HQ called, it wasn't random. It meant the clock was already ticking. And whatever waited at the end of this road, it wasn't going to wait for her to catch her breath. She pressed harder on the accelerator, the sound of the engine roaring beneath her. The gym was behind her now. Civilian life, behind her. Ahead, only the unknown, a mission, a threat, and a choice that might change everything. She whispered to herself, steady and low, the same words she'd used before every op she'd ever led. Lock it in, Morgan. Time to move. The highway blurred beneath her tires, the city sprawling out ahead, but Aria Morgan's mind was miles away, somewhere between the battles she'd survived and the one she was speeding toward. Every muscle in her body was tight, a coiled spring wound by duty and fear. 90 minutes. That's all HQ had given her. 90 minutes to stop being the woman who spent her mornings sweating out ghosts in a quiet gym, and become Lieutenant Aria Morgan again. The soldier who made impossible calls and carried the weight of lives on her shoulders. By the time she reached the secure gates of Fort Connolly, adrenaline had sharpened her senses into a razor's edge. The checkpoint guards didn't greet her like a reservist. No casual salute, no polite nod. This wasn't routine. The first soldier scanned her ID and barked something into his radio. Within seconds, the gate opened, and she was waved through without question. No briefing yet. No explanations. Just movement, fast and deliberate. Aria followed a convoy of armored Humvees deeper into the base. She parked where an officer directed her, grabbed her bag, and stepped out into the scorching sun. All around her, there was motion, soldiers running, technicians hauling crates of gear, comms specialists shouting into headsets. This wasn't just a deployment. This was a scramble. And then she saw them, the faces she hadn't expected to ever see assembled again. Her old team. Ramirez was the first to notice her, his broad frame towering over a table stacked with tactical vests and rifles. He paused mid-conversation, a flicker of disbelief crossing his face before it hardened into something else, relief. Morgan. She gave him the smallest nod she could manage, her throat tight. Before she could respond, Patel appeared behind him, arms folded, eyes scanning her like a battlefield assessment. Patel was still Patel, sharp, precise, calm under pressure, but the slight twitch in her jaw gave her away. They all felt it. The tension, the gravity, The unspoken understanding that whatever brought them back together wasn't ordinary. "Didn't think we'd see you again," Ramirez muttered, handing her a vest. "Guess they didn't forget who keeps pulling us out of the fire." Aria forced a half-smile, but said nothing. She didn't trust her voice yet. Before the reunion could sink in, the blast doors at the far end of the hangar slammed open, and a commanding voice cut through the noise like a blade. "Team Echo, briefing room now. Colonel Briggs." Her old CO. This voice hadn't changed, but the years had carved deeper lines into his face, and the urgency in his stride said more than any words could. The team followed in silence, boots pounding against concrete, the weight of unspoken questions hanging over them. The briefing room was dim, the air heavy with anticipation. A massive digital map stretched across the far wall, displaying multiple red markers clustered along the east coast. The hum of servers filled the silence until Briggs turned to face them, his jaw set. "We're facing a potential coordinated domestic threat. I can't give you the full picture yet, but intelligence flagged a high-priority target moving within our borders. This isn't training. This isn't simulation. If we're right, this op could decide whether hundreds, maybe thousands, walk away alive." The words hit like a gut punch. Patel leaned forward, arms braced on the table. "Sir, with respect, YS. We're scattered, half of us inactive. You've got full battalions on standby." Briggs' gaze locked on Aria. She felt the weight of it settle like armor across her chest. "Because this isn't just about muscle. It's about precision. And there's no one I trust more than Echo Team to get it done. Especially you, Lieutenant Morgan." The room shifted subtly, the rest of the team glancing at her. The silence was deafening. Aria clenched her jaw, forcing herself to stand taller, to meet his gaze without flinching. She could feel the pressure settling onto her like an old, familiar weight, one she thought she'd put down for good. "Sir," she managed, steady despite the pounding in her chest. "What's the mission profile?" Briggs tapped a control, and the map zoomed in on a small coastal city, its docks highlighted in red. "Intercept and neutralize," he said flatly. "Target Alpha's convoy hits this port at 0300. We stop them there, or we don't stop them at all." Ramirez exhaled sharply, rubbing a hand down his face. Patel's knuckles whitened around her pen. The clock was already ticking, but Briggs wasn't done. "There's one more thing. This isn't just a smash and grab. There's chatter that the convoy is moving something volatile. If intelligence is correct, one mistake could turn this into a mass casualty event." That landed heavier than anything else. The team exchanged quick, silent looks. Volatile. That one word carried more weight than the rest of the briefing combined. After Briggs dismissed them, the hangar erupted into motion. Weapons were checked, gear loaded, plans reviewed, contingency stacked upon contingency. Aria stood at her locker, pulling on her vest, each strap clicking into place with muscle memory she thought she'd forgotten. Her hands were steady now, her mind focused. The fear was still there. It always was. But she'd learned long ago that fear sharpens you if you let it. As she adjusted her comms headset, Patel stepped beside her, voice low. "You okay?" Aria hesitated, then gave the smallest nod. "Ask me after we're wheels up." Patel smirked faintly, the corners of her lips twitching upward. It wasn't reassurance, but it was enough. Nearby, Ramirez was muttering to himself as he double-checked his rifle, the ritual grounding him. Aria watched him for a moment, remembering the night in Hellman when he dragged Reyes out under heavy fire. These weren't just teammates. They were family forged in chaos, and tonight, that bond would be tested all over again. 15 minutes later, the team gathered near the loading bay. The roar of engines filled the cavernous hangar as two Black Hawks idled on the tarmac, blades slicing the air in furious rhythm. The heat, the noise, the controlled chaos. It was all achingly familiar. For a moment, Aria closed her eyes, inhaling deeply, grounding herself in the memory of what she once was and what she needed to be again. Briggs approached, placing a firm hand on her shoulder. "I pulled you back in because I know what you're capable of, Morgan. Don't second-guess yourself out there." She met his eyes, steady this time. "Wasn't planning on it, sir." He nodded once, sharp and approving. Then, without another word, he turned back toward the command tower, leaving her with the weight of his trust pressing down harder than the vest strapped across her chest. As the team climbed aboard the chopper, the rotors thundered overhead, whipping up a storm of dust and hot air. Aria settled into her seat, pulling her straps tight, her rifle resting across her lap. Patel sat opposite her, Ramirez to her left, the familiar formation clicking into place like pieces of a puzzle she thought she'd lost. For the first time in months, the silence between them wasn't awkward. It was focused, sharpened by purpose. The headset crackled to life as the pilot's voice came through. Echo 1, we are airborne in 30 seconds. ETA to target location, 22 minutes. Aria's grip tightened around the edge of her seat. 22 minutes. 22 minutes to set aside every doubt, every fear, every ghost. Outside the open doors, the night stretched endlessly, the stars scattered like distant fires above the dark expanse of land below. She felt the shift deep in her chest, the moment when everything else faded. The gym, the sleepless nights, the shadow box of regrets, and only the mission remained. Somewhere ahead, beyond the coastline, a convoy was moving. Whatever it carried, whoever it served, it had the power to shatter lives if they failed. An Echo team did not fail. Aria inhaled once, slow and deliberate, then whispered to herself. Words she hadn't said aloud in over a year, words that anchored her heart to steel. Lock it in, Morgan. Time to go to work. The Black Hawk roared through the night, its rotors cutting the darkness as Echo teams sat in silence, weapons strapped and eyes locked forward. Below them, the coastline stretched like a jagged scar, distant city lights glimmering faintly under the haze. In less than 20 minutes, Lieutenant Aria Morgan would step back into a battlefield she thought she'd left behind. There was no going back now. Whatever waited at those docks, it was bigger than anything they'd faced before. Her headset crackled softly with the pilot's voice. Echo 1, 2 minutes out. Target in sight. Aria exhaled slowly, steadying her pulse. 6 years of deployments had drilled this into her. Control your breath, control your mind, control the fight. She whispered the same mantra she had before every mission. Lock it in, Morgan. Time to move. The helicopter skimmed low over the tree line, the dark sprawl of the docks materializing beneath them. Through the open door, Aria spotted the convoy, 6 armored trucks inching toward a waiting freighter, engines growling beneath the humid night air. Colonel Briggs' voice came over comms, sharp and clipped asterisk. Echo, intercept before the loadout. No civilian exposure. Confirm. Copy that. Aria replied. Voice calm though her heartbeat thundered in her chest. Asterisk. The Black Hawk touched down half a click away. Boots hit the ground in unison, rifles raised. Echo team moving like shadows through the tight maze of shipping containers. The sea breeze carried the smell of salt and oil, every sound amplified by adrenaline. Patel's voice came low through the headset asterisk. Thermal scan shows 10, maybe 12 hostiles outside the trucks. Could be more inside. Copy, Aria whispered back. Ramirez, you and Quan flank left. Patel with me. Eyes open. Quiet until I call it. Asterisk they closed in, hugging steel walls slick with condensation, until the rumble of the convoy filled the air. Beyond the crates, armed men moved crates from truck beds toward the freighter's ramp. Most were standard shipping containers, except one. At the center of the line sat a massive, reinforced unit, bolted, sealed, and stamped with a faded biohazard symbol. Her stomach tightened. Whatever was inside wasn't meant to see daylight. Asterisk the first shot shattered the silence. No one knew who fired it, but chaos exploded instantly. Gunfire ripped through the docks, bullets sparking against steel. Shouts, running footsteps, and the heavy clang of dropped gear filled the night. Contact left. Patel's voice roared through the headset. Aria dove behind a shipping container, returning fire in sharp, controlled bursts. One hostile dropped. Another scrambled for cover. Somewhere to her right, Ramirez yelled over the comms. 2 headed for the freighter. They're trying to move the container. Negative, Aria barked back. That crate doesn't leave the dock. Lock it down. Bullets tore through the night, shards of steel and concrete spraying in every direction. Aria ducked low, boots pounding as she cut across an open stretch to gain a better angle. Patel was at her side, signaling 2 fingers forward. Move, now. They sprinted, sliding into cover behind a stack of barrels just as a flashbang detonated nearby, blinding white heat washing across the clearing. Her ears rang, vision swimming, and then she saw him. Asterisk from behind the main truck stepped a man she thought she'd buried 18 months ago. Reyes. Her breath caught. The impossible stood 10 feet away, rifle raised, eyes cold and unrecognizing. For one fractured second, the battlefield fell silent inside her head. She saw him as he used to be, her teammate, her brother in arms. And then reality snapped back like a whip. Reyes. Her voice cracked across the comms. He froze for half a second. That hesitation saved her life. Ramirez slammed into him from the side, wrenching the rifle free and pinning him hard against the truck. Reyes struggled violently, but Ramirez locked him down, securing his arms with brutal precision. Lieutenant. Patel shouted over the chaos. Decision. He's theirs or ours. Call it. Asterisk Aria's mind reeled. None of this made sense. Reyes was dead. She'd seen the reports, carried his tag, mourned his loss. Why hadn't HQ told her? But there was no time for answers. Asterisk. Secure him, she snapped, forcing authority into her tone. Ramirez, zip him. Patel, with me, we take the truck. Asterisk. They sprinted across the clearing, cutting under fire toward the lead vehicle carrying the sealed container. Patel tossed a flash charge beneath its chassis, detonating it with a sharp click. The shockwave rattled the pavement, sending two hostiles sprawling. Aria hauled herself up the truck side ladder, boots slipping on wet steel, reaching the cab just as the driver lunged for his pistol. One swift strike dropped him. She yanked the wheel hard right, forcing the entire truck to jackknife across the narrow loading dock, blocking the freighter's ramp completely. Asterisk. Truck secured, she shouted into her comms. Asterisk. The freighter's engines roared, but without the cargo, it couldn't leave. The remaining hostiles scattered into the shadows, vanishing into the labyrinth of containers. Echo swept the perimeter quickly, clearing the last pockets of resistance. And then, just like that, it was over. The docks fell silent, but for the steady lap of waves and the distant approach of sirens. Asterisk. Ramirez dragged Reyes forward, his wrists zip-tied, his face smeared with sweat and dirt. His eyes locked on Aria's, unreadable and sharp, the unspoken weight between them heavier than the rifle slung over her shoulder. She opened her mouth to speak, but stopped. There weren't words big enough for this moment. Not yet. Briggs' voice came through the headset, calm but edged with steel. Echo, objective secured. Package neutralized. Extraction inbound. Aria exhaled for the first time in what felt like hours, her breath shaky in her chest. Around her, Echo tightened gear straps, checked rifles, and secured the convoy. She stared at Reyes, her mind spinning, her heartbeat still pounding against her ribs. Reyes was alive. And if Reyes was alive, then the past she thought she'd buried wasn't dead at all. Someone had lied. And this mission, this call back to duty, was only the beginning. Asterisk. The whir of approaching helicopters cut through the salt-thick air. Echo team boarded one by one. Exhaustion etched into their faces, but resolve burning in their eyes. Aria climbed in last, seating herself across from Reyes, who refused to look away from her. The chopper lifted, the docks shrinking beneath them into a blur of steel and shadow. Aria gripped her rifle tighter, jaw set, eyes fixed on the horizon. Whatever waited beyond this mission wasn't going to wait for long. Asterisk.